What's up everyone, Bradley Jack Design here with another design tutorial, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create 3D text like this in Cinema 4D Lite. Cinema 4D Lite is a version of Cinema 4D that you can access through After Effects. So if you don't have Cinema 4D on your computer but you do have After Effects, you should be able to get to Cinema 4D Lite. So I'm actually going to quit out of Cinema 4D. And we're going to hop over to After Effects. So we've got on here, we've got After Effects open. All we have to do is go up to File, New, Cinema 4D File. And we can name it whatever we want. I'm just going to name it Gold. I already have it, whatever, we'll replace. And that's going to open up a light version of Cinema 4D. So this is a light version of Cinema 4D. It might look a little bit different than any of your Adobe programs you're used to working with, but I'm going to show you a little general understanding of what we're looking at. We've got the, sort of project view window here. This is where our workspace is. Down here at the bottom are where any materials are going to be that you might be using. So this is where your metallic or gold texture would be. Over here we've got some project settings, and then up here is the objects panel, or sort of like layers, and then up here are where the tools are. So a couple things to note before you get into creating anything. If you go up to render, you can edit render settings. And this is essentially where you can set up sort of your composition settings. So let's say we want to make this 2000 pixels by 2000 pixels. You can change the resolution to 3000, that's a lot, to like 300. You can change a bunch of stuff in here. What I do personally is I just change the pixels, and you can see this lighter box on the inside is our composition now. Also, what you can do is you're using this default camera. So we've got cameras here, default camera. So if we want to navigate around the scene, you can do so by holding down 1, 2, or 3. If you hold down 1 and drag around, you can move up and down, left and right. If you hold down 2, you can zoom in and out. And if you hold down 3, you can rotate by moving your mouse around after you click and drag. So that's that'll help you navigate throughout the program when we're creating the text. What I'm going to do first is add a camera, and this camera is going to serve as basically a camera we access at the end when we're done. So we have we have the exact angled shot we want of the text. So I'm going to go over here, and as you can see, when we added the camera, it added it up here to the objects, and then we can go over to the properties over here and select coordinates, and this is going to show all the coordinates of the position, size, and rotation of that object. So if I zero them all out, you can see this camera is shooting straight back into the distance along the axis. And if I go to camera, I can use camera and set it to that camera. You go to cameras, use camera, camera, and this is the default view of that camera, so we're dead on 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to go into and select use camera, go back to our default camera, and now I'm going to add some text. So to do that, up here at the top, you see this pen tool. If you click and drag and click and hold, you can select all sorts of things. You can select a circle, star, formula. I'm going to do text. So you can see here, this is our text we have. If we click on text, and we go to the object, we can change things about the text. So you can see it's off to the side, which looks odd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the alignment to middle. Now it's in the middle. We can use our 1, 2, or 3 and drag around so we can see our text a little bit better. And we can name it whatever we want under the properties. So I'm going to change the text to say gold. So we've got this gold text here. We can change the font to whatever we want. So if you click on font, it'll open up your fonts. Let's just choose, I'm going to choose Agency, Black Extended. So now I'm going to zoom out. We've got this nice big font going on here. So I'm going to set the coordinates back to 0, 0, 0 because I accidentally moved them. But under text, we can go to object. This is where you can change the text itself, the font, the attributes of the font, the alignment. The height is going to be how big the font is, of course. So I'm just going to keep that at 200. You can change the horizontal spacing if you want more or less spacing in between the letters. You can also kern. It'll pop up if you check mark kern, the kerning there, and then if you drag over, you can drag each letter individually to kern each letter. So I think that's all I want to do here for that text for now. But I want to see what it looks like from our camera angle that we have. So we can't see anything, as I thought. So I'm going to take that camera, I'm going to change the coordinates of the camera, and I'm going to move it back. So if you just zoom back, scroll down, or you can enter in a negative number, it'll zoom back. So let's do -800. A nice round number. And we're going to move it up 100 centimeters. So now gold is hypothetically in the center of our composition. It's not, so I'm going to do 80. That looks a little bit better. So there, we've got gold in the center of our composition. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click these circles next to the coordinates that we have set, all 9 of these. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a keyframe on this timeline here. Now we're not creating an animation, we're just creating 3D text. So we're going to have one frame, but I just want to lock in the coordinates for that camera. So when we export, we can just have that camera view be our export view, and then we'll be able to see the gold from straight on. So we've got the text here, we've got our camera set up, we've got our text looking how we like it. Now we need to make it 3D. To do that, you can click up here. If you hover over the subdivision surface, we can click and hold and select extrude. And that's going to create the extrusion for our text, but we need to tell the program we want our text to be extruded. So we need to click and drag the text up and in to this extrusion object. So you want to make sure that the arrow's pointing down when you click over it, and it's going to make the text 3D. So you can see we've got some 3D text here, of course. If we click on the extrude, we can have properties down here that we can edit. I'm mainly going to focus on objects and caps. So the object, we can change this last number here for movement. So it's moving at 20 centimeters. If you do X or Y, it'll move it up and down, and left and right, we want to do that. We just want to move it back. So I'm going to type in 50 to make it deeper. You know, you can type in 500 if you wanted. It's going to make it super deep. You know, make it whatever you want. So, you know, let's do 75. So we've got 75 centimeter deep text. I'm then going to click on caps. So these caps and rounding, you can see, I'm going to add a fillet cap to the start or to the front of this text. And as you can see, it added a bevel. We can adjust the bevel by adding steps, which are going to round it out. You know, it'll add 1 step, 2 step. It'll just progressively get rounder. I like to just have 1 step though, to have a nice sharp bevel. You can change the radius. So if I make it bigger, you can see it's making the beveled edge wider, or I can make it smaller. So I'm just gonna have a nice sharp, small beveled edge on this. You can change the type of fillet. So right now it's convex. If we zoom in here, I can show you what these do. So we've got convex, there's linear, we've got concave, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to check mark constrain, which is going to constrain it to the inside of the existing text. So here you go. If we do 1 step, you can see it sort of steps in once. If you do 2 steps, it sort of has this stair step effect in here. If we do engraved, it's actually engraved on the inside. So it's a sharp outside edge, but I like to use just convex. So we're going to zoom out. We've got our nice gold text here that says gold. We've got a nice edge on it. I'm not going to put a cap on the, actually I'm going to keep a cap on the back just because we're not going to see the back. We're just going to see the front, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to keep constrained selected again to keep it inside the text we have. So you can see it's sort of like an outer bevel and an inner bevel. So I'm just going to use inner instead. So now we have some nice looking 3D text here. Pretty basic. If we click up here, this is the render view. You can also just hit Command R. This is what our text looks like. So pretty boring, just some plain blue-gray text. So what we need to do is we need to add some texture to it in order to make it look gold, or material to it. So in order for materials to look realistic, we need to add some lighting sources. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to this light here, and I'm going to add an area light. And you can move objects around in two different ways. So we've got the light here. There's a lot more properties we can fiddle around with here. I'm going to go to coordinates. You can then, use the coordinates to hit, -600 to move it back. You can then type in specific numbers to move it to specific spots. Now let's do 500. So I moved the object of the light over here. You can also use these arrows and move it around freely however you want. But if you wanted a specific, definite place for your light to be, you can do that as well. I'm also going to then, oops, I made it 0 wide. There we go. I'm going to take this light and I'm going to rotate it down a little bit, and I'm going to rotate it towards the light. So let's do 30 and 20, not 20, -20. So it's angled down. So we've got this one light that's sort of shining on our gold here, and if we hit Command R to render, this is what it looks like. You can see sort of a lighter area over here showing light on the object. Now what I'm going to do with this light is, under general, I'm going to select shadow, and I'm going to select a soft maps shadow. So it's going to create a soft shadow and actually emit a shadow to add some more realistic tendencies to the light. So let's take this other light and copy and paste it. And what I'm doing is I'm setting up a 3-light system. So a light from the right, a light from the left, and then a light up top. Photographers would know probably pretty good lighting systems. You can look up different lighting systems online to maybe see what will look realistic. So I'm going to take this light and I'm just going to move it over. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I want to move it over -500. So now we have this light on the same side, exact same spot on the other side, but we're going to change the rotation to -30. So I've got these two lights now hitting the front of my object, which is what I want. You can see the front of the object now can be seen pretty well. So let's zoom in a little bit. I'm gonna add one more light on the top so we can see some of the back here. So we're going to add another area light. I'm going to rotate this. See, if you rotate it on the Z-axis, it doesn't do anything. You can rotate it on the Y-axis to 90, and then just move it up. You can use the arrows again. You can also drag these dots to make the object bigger. So you can see we've got the light that's about the same size. I'm going to move it up a little bit. And you can see the object will change automatically. And I'm going to give this object under general a soft shadow as well. So now if we render, we've got a lit object that is 3D of our text. One last thing we're going to do is we're going to add in an environment or a sky to this. So you can see we've got just like this area back here. If we're going to make this gold, gold needs to reflect something. So if we were to make this gold right now, it's just going to reflect black. So to prevent that, what we're going to do is we're going to click up here. We're not going to select environment, we're going to select sky. So now if we hit render, it's this gray default sky because we don't have a material added to it. So we're going to get back to that in a little bit. First, I'm going to show you some of the materials and how you can create a material for this object. So If you want to create a material, just double click down in the material panel. And then I like to edit the material by opening up the material editor window. So in this, you can change all sorts of things: color, diffusion, luminance, transparency, reflectance, environment, fog bump, normal, alpha glow, displacement. The main ones I'm going to show you is color, reflectance, and bump. You can do luminance if you want it to give off light. If you want to make it transparent, you can check mark that if you want to make something look like glass. But for this, I'm just going to show you how to create some basic things. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take our material and click and drag it, and you can see it's sort of glowing around gold. I'm going to apply it. So it now just applied this light gray texture to our gold. If we render, I've got this nice white looking word of gold. By default, it'll have this default reflectance on it. I'm going to actually remove that, and then if we render it again, it looks exactly the same. Oh well. So we can change the color up here. So if you have an RGB color, you can put in an RGB color. You can see anything you edit or change will do it automatically. I'm going to go back to hue, saturation, and value so I can make this, sort of a gray like we had. And for reflectance, if you want to make something look realistic, you can go to add. I'm going to add a Beckmann light. You can see it completely disappeared. That's because I added a reflectance to it of an 100% strength. So if we render, this is sort of chrome, but we can't see that it's chrome because it's 100%. There's no environment. The environment is just gray. So we can't see anything that's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the opacity of this layer essentially to, let's do 27. Now if we turn it on, it's reflecting that back. Now we can't really tell that right now because there's nothing in the scene, but let's just say I copy and paste this extrusion real quick and I move it out in front and then I render it. You can see that it's reflecting back this gold. So if I bump this up to 100%, we'll see if we can see something. No, we can't. All right, well, that was a failed attempt to show you that. But we can bump up the reflectance and you can see more and more things reflecting. So let me get rid of that. Everything naturally is going to have some sort of reflectance to it. Now, if I were just trying to make this look like plastic, I might bump up the roughness a little bit to say 25%. And you can see what it's going to do in this preview here. This is what your texture is going to look like, your material. So you can see it's kind of a really reflective plastic. You can turn it down a bit to be less reflecting, however you want. And then if we change the color, you can see the color's not doing anything because I have saturation down all the way. So let me bump it up. You can make it a deep blue. And if we render it, you've got some dark blue textures going on. Now, that's not what we want to do with this tutorial. We want to make it gold. So what we're going to do is, color's not going to matter really, but I'm going to make it a goldish color. So, that's sort of goldish. That'll work. Under reflectance, I'm going to remove that layer. I'm going to add the same Beckmann back to 100%. And if we go down here, we've got a layer for now. So these are going to have preset reflectance properties depending on materials. So we've got dielectric and conductor. So if I click on dielectric, we can click on custom presets. So you can have the reflectance of beer or glass or jade or milk or pearl. So if I select pearl, this is what the reflectance of pearl would be. But what I want is conductor. And these are going to be metals then, as you can see here. So one of them in here is gold. So if I select gold, you can see that our preview looks super gold, and that looks awesome. That's what we want. So if I hit render, it looks like this, which is kind of lame, but that's gold. It's not reflecting very well because there's no environment for it to reflect off. You can see that it's reflecting on the inside here, which is nice. Now what I want to do is I want to add a texture to this. So if you want to add a texture to your material, you can add a bump. So it's going to add a bumpiness to it. So I'm going to add a texture I have. I'm going to load an image. And is it in here? Now there's one in there. I've got a metal material somewhere on my computer, hopefully, that I should have moved somewhere else. Here we go, metal JPEG. So I'm gonna hit yes. So I'm gonna add this bump to it. And with that checked, you can check mark it and you can see it's not doing anything at all. Let me hide this sky. There we go. So if I get rid of the sky, you can actually see what it's doing now. No, you can't. Well, that's no fun. All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna show you, I'm gonna add this sky in, and I'm gonna show you what adding the sky does to the scene. So I'm gonna create a new material real quick. I'm gonna uncheck everything except for luminance. And I'm gonna open up an image that's an HDRI image. So I have this HDRI image, and if I just do a quick preview of it, it's essentially a 360-degree image of a studio. So you can find these online. If you just Google HDRI images, you can find them. And then I'm going to just blur it like 50%. And I'm going to apply that material to our sky. So now if I hit this, you can see that it is reflecting a ton. And if I move the camera around, you can see this is what the gold texture looks like. So you can see it's actually gold now. And if we zoom in, you can see that bump we have of this metallic texture. And we can increase the strength of that bump to say 100%. And it's going to have that texture of 100%. Now, what I like to do instead is I like to add a texture of, hit clear. I'm going to load just noise, which is just going to add some noise to it. If we render it out, you can see it looks like that. That looks insane because the strength is 100%. I would dumb that down. If you double click on the noise, you can change a lot of things about it. You can change the seed number, which is just going to change what the noise looks like. I'm going to change the global scale to be like 600. That way we just have this sort of subtle waviness to the texture itself. So we've got this gold texture that looks crazy. If we render from this angle, you can see it's hitting all of these lights insanely. So what I'm going to do, let me click out of the material. If we click on the actual material of the sky, we can offset it. It'll rotate on a horizontal axis or on a vertical axis. So if I render it now, you can see it looks a little bit clearer because we don't have that harsh light coming from the sky. Now what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to use our camera we set up because this is what it's going to look like as a final product. So this is the angle we're going to see. So if I put this back to say 10, let's see what this looks like. See, it's super blown out because of this super huge big light in the back. I'm actually going to edit this material and I'm going to make it actually only like 20%, 25% blurred. I think the blur is making it super bright. So that's a little bit better. We can go into our matte. I think that bump still doesn't look how we want it. Oh, it's because I changed the global scale to 1%. So that explains why it looks so bad. We can see if I make it 600, it just gives a waviness to the gold that we have. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see our gold a little bit better. And then I'm going to click up at the object here and I'm going to rotate it again a little bit more. Let's do actually negative 15%. See what this looks like. So there we go. So you can see it's reflecting off stuff, but we can still see the front of it fine. It's not blown out. But what we can do to add in, let's go back to our material, see what we can do here. So you can see the material. The color doesn't matter because we have the reflectance all the way. If I change this to say 50%, it's less reflecting, but it does have a little bit of a shine to it. But I'm just going to make it 100% because that's what I like for gold. You can go in here, tweak the bumps. Bump again, I would say 10% or so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add another light actually. And I'm going to just drag this light back. Or I'm just going to move it to the side on accident. We're going to move it. Let me change my camera angle here. And actually I'm using the wrong camera. Let me go to the default camera. So we're going to move this up. Zoom out. I'm going to make this wide and zoom out. And what I'm going to do is under details, I'm going to show in reflection. And what that's going to do is, as it says, is going to show it in the reflection. So if I go back to our default camera, make sure the coordinates haven't changed, which it has. Camera, camera, camera. Okay, so we've got this camera here. Now if I hit the render settings, this light, oh, I changed the wrong thing. Here we go. So move this up, move this over, move this back. If I render, you can see that light now in the gold. So you can see it adds a highlight to the front, which adds something fun to the gold, so you can see it a little bit more texturally. Now I'm going to add, got that bump. I'm going to bump that bump up a little bit and take a look at it. So this is how we have this gold looking right now. Now, this isn't looking how I necessarily want it, but you can see we've got some gold texture going on. Let me change the strength down to like that. Oh, I'm going to take the reflectance and add a little bit of roughness to it. So I'm going to add like 15% roughness. And now we've got this sort of gold bar with a little bit of noise to it. That looks better. If anything at like 100%, it's going to look a little bit weird. I'm actually going to take this light, go to general, and I'm going to dumb down the intensity to like 75%. Now if I do this, you can see we've got this nice gold text with some highlights on it. You know, I might zoom around here. I'm just going to take this light and lower it a little bit. And I'm going to move it to the front a little bit. And we're going to come back here. And if we hit render, so we got this sort of nice gold text that you can use. Now, that's just one way to create a gold material. If you wanted to add something, we can easily go back into the text here and change it to something else because it's all live. So I can change it to silver. And then if we render, it is now silver. Well, let's make a silver texture. So I'm just going to copy the existing metallic texture we have. And I'm going to double click that. I'm going to change the reflectance for now from gold to silver. And if I do that and then drag it on top, it's now silver. So if I hit render view, it is now silver. Now it looks a little odd because our reflectance is that. You know, I can change the color then to be more white. Then if I click on that, look at that. We've got this nice super sharp silver text. We can change the text kerning so there's not this huge gap a car could drive through by the V. Move it around. So now we've got this nice silver text that we can use. So this is pretty nice. That's how I would make a metallic texture. We've got this text that we can utilize. So I'm just going to make sure that the text is in our render frame. So I'm going to take our camera, and actually if you save at any time, so I'm going to save this as silver and go to After Effects. You know, our gold project is here. You can go to our gold. Where's our silver we just made? We're going to drag it into After Effects. And if you click and drag it down to a composition here, to create a composition, I've got caps lock on, it'll show you what it's going to look like. So this is right now what our composition looks like because we have a 2000 by 2000 square. So what I'm actually going to do is change our render settings, and I'm going to bump up the width of our project so it takes up more room. So I'm going to bump it to like, let's do like 5,000, and the height's like 2,000. And the resolution, which I didn't change, apparently, let's do 300. There we go. So now if I hit save and go back to After Effects, it should change it to what we have. But since we made the composition 2000 by 2000, I'm going to go back to the project. Now if I click on the composition, you can see it's 5000 by 2000. Let's make a new composition instead. And here we go. Here's our new composition. So I still need to back up this camera we have, this default camera. I need to bump it back so we can actually see it. So I'm just going to scroll down until it's both inside. You know, maybe I move the camera over a little bit so the V's in the middle. Save. So now we have this silver font, silver 3D text in After Effects, and this is where we're going to export the text. So, I need to check mark these red boxes and then save. And then if I go back here, it'll pop open and show our new view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change renderer to standard final, and that's going to get rid of all of these lines and show you what it's actually going to look like. So now we've got this sweet looking nice silver text here. I'm going to change our After Effects timeline. I'm going to drag the work end area all the way over because we only want one frame. We don't need 30 seconds of frames. That's going to be 900 frames it's trying to render. So we've got silver here. We've got our one frame. We're going to change renderer to standard final. And then all we have to do if we want to export this is we go up to File, Export, Add to Render Queue, and then we can render out this text. Now what I'm going to do is change the output module from lossless. If you click on that, you can change the format. So right now it's formatted to a video, but I want to change it to a ping file. And then the video output is going to video output a ping, but I'm going to change it from RGB to RGB plus alpha because we don't have anything in the background. And then if I hit OK, I can hit render, but I'm going to select where it's going first. So it's going to my desktop, that's fine. So I will render that. And then it's going to render out this 5000 by 2000 size picture of silver. So if we hop over here to my desktop, I have a folder titled whatever your document is in After Effects. So I've got silver 2 here. And once this is done rendering, it's going to pop in the silver. So let me just hop back over to Cinema 4D. So as that's rendering, we're going to wrap things up here. So to create a material, you can double click down here. You click and drag the material on top of an object to add it to it. You can change color, reflectance, transparency. You can give it a bump, which is a texture. You can use any texture you want. If you want it to glow, you can add a glow. There's a ton of stuff you can do in Cinema 4D, but for this tutorial, I just wanted to show you how to create 3D text that has a metallic finish to it. I can delete the texture on top of the gold here, so now I still have the gold text that is on here. Let me pop back over to After Effects. Here's our finder. So here's our silver text that we have. Now, when I import this into Photoshop, what I generally do is duplicate the layer and set it to multiply or overlay to add a bit of texture to it or to darken it up a bit. So this is actually pretty nice, but you'd see if I add a multiplied layer set to like 25 or 20, it darkens it up a little bit, but I think this looks pretty nice. You can go ahead and adjust different light settings depending on what your scene is. Now this would probably look good with a darker background because there's a lot of shadows in it. But this is how I create text in Cinema 4D Lite. It's pretty simple. You just hop in here, create your text, extrude it, set up your extrusion settings to be whatever you want. You can then go in and add some lighting to affect the lights of the text. You can see if I uncheck these and then render it, you can see this looks fine, you know, because we have this sky in the background. So if that's the effect you want, you don't need to have any lights. You know, let me set this sky to 0 and just see what this looks like with no lights at all. So that looks okay, but it doesn't have the same effect or realism if you have actual lights set up. You can add a light in the front and set any of the lights to show in under details, show in reflection, so you can see them in the reflection. You can set up a sky file. I would look around and find a bunch of different HDRI files that you can use. There's a bunch online. I think HDRI Haven has a bunch that you can use for free. You can find different materials online that you can use for free as well. But I hope you guys learned a lot on how to create some basic 3D text using the software you might already have. If you have any other suggestions for tutorials in the future, go ahead and let me know below. If you have any other questions on something like this, feel free to DM me on Instagram at BradleyJackDesign. But other than that, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.